Greetings all, Ferrariman601 here. Welcome to another 1/400 scale die-cast model aircraft review of this, the Airbus A350-900 rendered in 1/400 scale by Gemini Jets. The Airbus A350, it is a member of what I suppose we could call as the new age of civil aviation. It is a twin-engine, wide-body commercial airliner, and this seems to be the overall architectural specification, the overall design schema that the big aviation manufacturers are exploring now in terms of civil jets. We're going for efficiency in terms of architecture, efficiency in terms of range, capacity, weight, and fuel consumption. Fuel prices only ever get higher. Therefore, the manufacturers and the engineers need to figure out more ways of trying to save fuel, and that means reducing weight, reducing aerodynamic inefficiencies, mainly in terms of drag, and maximizing passenger capacity and range. And we do that through all sorts of different space-age materials and all kinds of different things in terms of engine architecture and design, trying to boost that overall fuel efficiency. If you can save weight and you can save on fuel consumption, that means that you can get more people and more materials across the oceans for less money. And that's overall what the design philosophy of the A350 and other jets like it are attempting to do. And so far it appears that Airbus, at very least, have been able to do this to great effect. The Airbus A350-900, it made its first flight on the 14th of June 2013, and it entered passenger service commercially with Qatar Airways on the 15th of January 2015. The aircraft is currently in service today, with 366 having been produced as of the 31st of May 2020. Production of the A350 has ranged from 2010 to the present day here in 2020. The primary operators of this aircraft are Qatar Airways, Singapore Airlines, Cathay Pacific, and Lufthansa. Obviously, Air France, as we see this particular A350 in Air France colors, is another operator of the A350. Unit cost for the A350-900 as of 2018 was $317.4 million US, and the overall program cost for this from Airbus, 11 billion euros. Yes, that's billion with a B in the euro money there. Airbus obviously making a very large investment with the design and production of this aircraft, and so far, with 366 having been built as of May 2020, it appears that that investment is starting to pay back, particularly at a unit cost of $317.4 million US. Let's take a closer look at the A350. We'll talk about its specification. We'll talk a little bit about its currently short history. And of course, we'll take a closer look at this wonderful 1/400 scale rendition by Gemini Jets of the A350. Before we take a closer look at this wonderful rendition in 1/400 scale of the A350, we must take a look at the box in which it arrived. Here it is, coming into your screen at very close range here. I do apologize. However, a little bit of a departure from the typical boxes that we get from Gemini Jets, in that the Gemini Jets logo is nowhere on this front panel of the box. Instead, we have our typical rendering of the aircraft here, done very sharply. Basically the same size as the model itself, but nicely detailed there. As you can see, upper right of the box, we have got Air France and the little Air France stripe there as part of the logo. And then, of course, we have got Airbus A350-900 scale 1/400. Nothing at all in the lower right. Lower left, we've got our look inside tab per usual. Top panel of the box, we have got ourselves another rendering of the aircraft. Air France, Airbus A350-900 with registration Foxtrot Hotel Tango Yankee Alpha. Bottom panel of the box, basically the same as that top side panel there. Exactly the same, actually. And then the back of this box. A little bit more of a departure from your typical Gemini Jets boxes, because here, Gemini Jets, they apparently have a partner or a partner distributor, partner in marketing when it comes to distributing their Air France liveried models. We've got a couple Air France aircraft by Gemini Jets, and they've all got boxes quite like this. We've got Air France, Airbus A350-900, scale 1/400, and then we have a little description of the aircraft here, bilingual here in French and English. Now, I speak Spanish, which means that I can read French with no problem, but pronouncing it is quite a different matter, so I will not be reading you the French. However, I can tell you that the French and the English say exactly the same thing. Thankfully, they're not literal translations of each other, but they have the same information therein. With the introduction of its first Airbus A350 in October 2019, Air France is pursuing its long-haul fleet modernization strategy. With its 324-seat configuration, the Airbus A350-900 perfectly supports the Air France network's medium-capacity routes, including long-distance flights. Equipped with the latest technologies and engines, the Airbus A350-900 provides optimum comfort on board, economic and environmental performance. Now we get some technical data, or characteristics as the French says, in terms of the aircraft, and all of this is also bilingual. We've got a wingspan here of 64.75 meters. Overall length is 66.89 meters. Overall height, this is from the ground to the top of the vertical stabilizer, that's 17.05 meters. Cabin width, that's 5.61 meters, and then the cabin configuration, and you can see the technicalities here in terms of the actual seats configurations. Maximum takeoff weight is 280 tons, and those are metric tons. Cruising altitude is 43,100 feet, or 13,100 meters. The cruising speed is 903 kilometers per hour, which comes out to 488 knots, or Mach 0.85. Overall range, 8,100 nautical miles, 15,000 kilometers, and then the engines are two Rolls-Royce Trent XWB series engines. Also, I do want to point out a little bit of a typo here. Obviously, we have got literally translated length, head, tail, so overall length is how they render that in English, but they've misspelled the word length. I do wonder if this description overall was written in French, or written in French first by a native French speaker, and then it was just translated by somebody else and they missed that. I don't know. However, more information on the back of the box. We have Socatec. That is the partner that Gemini Jets uses for the, at very least, the Air France liveried models. Gemini Jets logo there, the first time we see it on the box, developed by Socatec, and then we've got their address there, apparently in Paris, and then we've got our Gemini Jets information for their corporate site and their assorted social media links. Copyright 2019, Gemini Jets, and then we have got ourselves all legalese here concerning Air France. And then, of course, you can't have it if you are less than 14 years old, apparently. Item number for those of you keeping score at home, made in China. Yes. Last feature here, the Look Inside tab. We flip that up, and then we have got ourselves exactly the same write-up on this Look Inside tab as we had on the back of the box. So they're just reiterating all of the same data, replete with the typo in the word length. So there it is. We already saw all of this. It's simply reiterated. It's a copy-paste. The only thing that's different here is we have schematic renderings of the aircraft here from profile as well as from above, showing you the overall wingspan here, and then our height from the ground and our length from nose to tail. Interesting, and again, a very different sort of box design than what we typically see from Gemini Jets, but it's a change of pace. Personally, I don't like these boxes quite as much because they're not quite as detailed in terms of the information that they give you in the write-up. That one obviously focusing entirely on this particular aircraft and Air France's use of this particular type of aircraft, not really giving you so much information about the A350 itself. However, we're going to rectify that presently. The story of the Airbus A350 takes us back to the beginning of the 21st century, specifically to the year 2004. Boeing had announced what eventually became the 787. Airbus, in this regard, were caught somewhat napping, in that during this era, emphasis in the civil aviation market was starting to shift away from just raw capacity and raw range, but it was starting to investigate the possibility of maintaining that capacity and that range, and perhaps extending them further, but while greatly enhancing efficiency, namely fuel efficiency. When it comes to vehicles in general, and aircraft specifically, we talk about efficiency in terms of lightness. This aircraft, therefore, as well as the Boeing 787, they both make great use of composite materials in their construction. The wing structure and large sections of the fuselage are actually made out of composite materials such as carbon fiber, which previously was a material that we saw used in military aircraft, but really, we saw carbon fiber come into mainstream use in the automotive industry because in racing cars in particular, you need to add lightness. But for that lightness, you must not at all concede structural rigidity and overall structural strength. So basically, when you remove weight, or add lightness, effectively speaking, you need to make sure that you can maintain your material properties so that they'll still structurally work for the things that you need them to do, but you'll get the advantage then of not having to cart extra weight around. The same is true for aircraft, quite obviously. Weight is absolutely everything on an aircraft. Weight, whether it's in fuel or in the structure of the aircraft itself, if you have to make concessions to either carry more fuel or to have a stiffer and stronger and heavier structure to do what you need the structural properties to be, that means that your overall capacity in payload, whether it's cargo or passengers, has to diminish necessarily. So if you can make the structure of an aircraft lighter, that means you could carry more fuel, you can carry more payload, or a combination of both. That's what Boeing were trying to do with the 787 development, and that's what Airbus were trying to do with the A350 development. Both of those aircraft make extensive use of carbon materials, as we mentioned, and other composites as well, to reduce the overall weight of this aircraft while maintaining structural rigidity and otherwise structural soundness, so they can increase their passenger capacity or cargo capacity, whichever the case may be, and because there's less weight to begin with to carry around, you can burn less fuel and go the same distance in the same time, if not improve upon those aspects. So that was the overall rationale for Airbus in designing the A350 as a reaction to the 787 from Boeing, which was trying to solve those problems. Initially, the A350 was supposed to be a variant of the A330, which of course is an older aircraft. They were initially going to be developing the A330 using composite materials. However, by the time 2005 and 2006 had rolled along, Airbus shelved that idea, instead going for an entirely new aircraft design, and that is what eventually became the A350. The A350 also gets a designation as extra wide body. Obviously, wide-body jets have become the bread and butter of the civil aviation market because they're just a more efficient way of setting up your architecture of these aircraft. You can get more capacity, whether it be cargo or people, for the same number of flights. So, in other words, one flight with more people is the same as two flights with less people, so more efficiency there. But in addition to all of that, those carbon materials made these aircraft lighter, but it also made them even stronger than their conventionally bodied aluminum variants. So, in other words, you get more efficiency, you get more capacity, you get longer range, and you do it with burning less fuel because you're not dealing with that extra weight. So, it's a win-win situation. The specifics in terms of the characteristics and specifications on the A350 are as follow. The A350-900, which is the variant that we see here, it has a sibling, the A350-1000, which is a slightly larger and longer variant. But the 900, the specs on that are, we have a cockpit crew of 2. Yes, only 2 people required to fly this aircraft, and of course that is in no small part thanks to the very advanced, sophisticated suite of avionics and other electronic systems that we have on board these aircraft nowadays. Full glass cockpit, fly-by-wire controls, all kinds of things on modern aircraft nowadays, such as this one. Overall seating in a configuration like this on the Dash 900, 315 seats is what we would see nominally, but the exit limit on the airframe is 440, so there is room for expansion there in the 900 series if an operator wants to have a denser floor plan there in terms of the seating arrangement. Overall length on the Dash 900 A350, 219.2 feet or 66.8 meters. The wingspan, 212.43 feet or 64.75 meters. The wings are swept back at a 31.9 degree angle. The aspect ratio on the wings, 9.49. Overall wing area is 442 square meters or 4,760 square feet. Overall height of the aircraft from the ground to the top of the vertical stabilizer, 55 feet 11 inches or 17.05 meters. Fuselage dimensions here, it is 19.7 feet wide, that's 5.96 meters. Overall height of the fuselage is 19.98 feet or 6.09 meters. So we are effectively identical in width and height, so we do have more or less a cylindrical fuselage profile there. Cabin width is 18 feet 5 inches or 5.61 meters. We also have an option for a 9 abreast seating arrangement, which is a little bit larger there. I believe we had another 1.2 feet, something like that, but still within the 900 variant there. Maximum takeoff weight is 280 metric tons. That equates to 617,295 pounds. Maximum payload capacity is 45.9 to 56.4 tons, depending on the aircraft's fuselage configuration there in terms of the interior layout. That is 118,000 pounds in old money. That ranges all the way up to 124,300 pounds. Fuel capacity is 140,795 liters. That equates to 37,194 U.S. gallons. In weight, that comes to 110,523 kilograms, or 243,662 pounds. Operating empty weight on the aircraft is 142 tons, or 314,000 pounds. The manufacturer empty weight, though, I assume this means the aircraft is on the ground static with no fuel or fluids on board. That's 255,075 pounds, or 115.7 tons. Cruising speed on the aircraft is Mach 0.85. That's 488 knots, or 903 kilometers per hour. The maximum operating speed would be Mach 0.89, 950 kilometers per hour, 513 knots there. Range on the Dash 900 spec is 15,000 kilometers. That's 8,100 nautical miles. Runway length required for takeoff there at the maximum takeoff weight at sea level is 8,500 feet, or 2,600 meters. Your landing weight at maximum landing weight is the length of the runway required 6,600 feet, or 2,000 meters. Service ceiling 43,100 feet. The engines, as we mentioned earlier, they are the Rolls-Royce Trent XWB series, the XWB series being developed specifically for this aircraft, and the extra wide body moniker there. Maximum thrust from those engines, each engine producing 84,200 pound-feet of thrust at sea level. That's 374.5 kilonewtons, and of course we have got two engines there, so you can double those specifications for the engine performance. Very nice capabilities on this aircraft. It is a long-range, extra-wide-body airliner, apparently. But notice, it's only got two engines, and this is something that has become very archetypical of the modern civil jet market. We're really going away from multiple engine planes in terms of having more than two engines. The tri-jets have been pretty much gone for a while now, and now the quad jets, aircraft like the Boeing 747, the Airbus A340, which this aircraft you could argue was designed to replace, and of course we have got the Airbus A380 with four engines as well. Is this a sign of things to come in terms of what most of the airlines are going to be operating, in terms of what they're looking at? This is a compromise between a really large, ultra-heavy aircraft like a 747 or an A380, as well as a smaller aircraft like a Boeing 767, 757, something like that, or even an Airbus A330, A320 even. You can see that we have the best of both worlds here. We've got that wide-body architecture, but we have that twin-jet scheme. And of course, with the engines, with Rolls-Royce doing a lot of work on optimizing the engines in terms of how they operate, how much fuel do they use, how much air do they need, how much bypass do they have here. That's really important on these modern engines now. More efficiency usually means you have higher bypass ratios in the engines. You can see where things are going, and if you look at the Boeing 787, it looks very similar to this overall plan as well, including its extensive use of composites. As we have got the aircraft rotating once again, we can use this opportunity to start taking a look at some of the more macrocosmic details on this particular model brought to us by Gemini Jets. In 1/400 scale, of course, it is in keeping with the overall size schema that we've been seeing in these 1/400 scale models. The overall length of the model is about 7.5, 8 inches, something like that, with about an 8.5-inch wingspan as well. So it fits in terms of what you would expect it to look like in proportion to other aircraft in 1/400 scale. And I've got to say, I was somewhat surprised at the overall dimensions of this model. For some reason, I had anticipated it being smaller than this, but it actually is not all that far off dimensionally from the Airbus A380 models that I have. It just goes to show what the architecture of this twin-jet extra-wide-body configuration can really do. It's not much shorter than the A380, and that's quite interesting to me. For some reason, I had just conceived of this aircraft being smaller than it actually is, but no, I was pleasantly surprised by that, and of course, all of that looks absolutely correct to me. Zooming in a little bit more as we start to rotate a little bit further, you can see some more of the macrocosmic details on this aircraft. Of course, Gemini Jet's doing a great job with the paint and the printing on this one, as you can see. I see absolutely nothing out of place. I don't see any smudges or chipping, paint loss, or decal loss. Not that there are decals on this thing. Everything is printed graphics-wise, but really everything is looking complete and correct to me, including the very distinctive cockpit windscreen on the A350, which has garnered some admiration as well as criticism from the aviation fan club, but I don't know, I think it's very, very interesting, although I have not yet been able to find an explanation as to why the cockpit windscreen looks like that. If I had to guess, it has something to do with the way that that particular glass panel is made. Obviously, this would be extensively fortified to deflect, first of all, the wind blast, and then, of course, you have other hazards that you have to consider, such as bird strikes or fine particulate matter eroding that glass or something like that. So it's probably a new material. I would have to guess some sort of composite glass structure, although I'd have to do some more research to confirm all of this, but it gives that very distinctive, almost raccoon disposition, I suppose you could say, to the front end of this aircraft. But I like it. It's different. It's very different, and it's very distinctive. It's one of the things that does help you to identify an A350 at first glance, so that's really nice. Other details that we can see on this model, everything looking absolutely fine as far as I'm concerned. The graphics are nice and crisp. The paint, as I mentioned, is great. The landing gear looks good, and the engines look really good. We'll take a closer look at them later on, but really the engines on this look very, very nice. I also just like how simple, how conservative, yet how very classy the Air France livery is looking these days. It's mostly white, as we see the liveries on most airlines. They are running mostly white liveries now, just because white paint is cheaper because they make more of it. But it looks very nice, and of course it is also in the French national colors of red, white, and blue. So there it is. And of course on the empennage there, on the vertical stabilizer, we do happen to have an artistic representation of the tricolor flag of France. Obviously Air France being the flag carrier for France, you would expect nothing less from that. It looks very nice, and again, it's a simple livery, it's a conservative livery, but I happen to like it very, very much, and I think Gemini Jets have done a wonderful job at rendering it here on this particular model. Stopping the rotation to take a closer look at the nose section of the A350-900. This is one of the most distinctive nose shapes that I think we have in the civil aviation world today. It's different, it's very unique, and it's almost somewhat jarring to behold for the first time, but you get used to it, and it looks good. Obviously, they are trying to maximize aerodynamic efficiency with this particular nose shape. It almost looks like the front end of streamlined trains. Talking about France here, it resembles the TGV somewhat, and over here in the United States, it somewhat resembles Amtrak's Acela, particularly the newer Acelas that are going to be coming online before too terribly long from now. But on the nose section of this aircraft, you can see we've got some great detail going on here. Obviously, we've got the Air France KLM group decal going on there. Above that, we have got our Sky Team graphics. We've obviously got our cockpit windows, and we've got some air data sensors along the side of the nose here. We've got decal work around here, or printing work rather, for the radar dome there, underneath the nose cone tip there. And then moving a rear slightly, we've got our main entry and exit door, as you can see. There we go with the focus, yes. So main entry exit door, replete with the details there in terms of the handles that you would use to open and close the door, so that looks very nice. And then of course moving to rears, we have got ourselves our cabin windows, the Air France title graphics there, some more static ports underneath for the ground crews. I believe, not on this side, but there is a cargo door on the starboard side of the aircraft. And then moving to rears, we have got the midline of the fuselage rather, heading toward midships. We've got some antenna aerials going across the top side of the fuselage. We've got three typical standard type antennas here. So we've got one, we have got number 2 right there, and then we have got number 3, which is slightly smaller toward the tail. And then over the top here, we have got our dome antenna for satellite phone, internet connectivity, and things of that nature. Moving across the left wing here, The leading edge of the wing is very nicely rendered. It has silver paint across the leading edge slats. That looks very nice. And then, of course, we have got ourselves our wing tip, which is obviously flared upward quite significantly, and that is to form an end fence along the wing tip here to stop those vortices from forming and causing a lot of turbulence for other aircraft following closely behind, and also increasing the wing's overall efficiency because that turbulence also equates to drag for the aircraft that's generating it. We can see we have got our little detent panel here for the strobe light here on the left wing. That looks nice. And then going back inboard, we have got our engine here on the left side of the aircraft and a little landing light cluster right there. So that looks very nice. And then, of course, we have got our logo on the side of the engine, as well as some ground servicing ports there for the engine as well. That all looks very nice, and quite pleased so far with what I'm seeing on the A350. Looks marvelous. Taking a look at the A350 from nose on, here we go. And we can start to see the shape of that nose in somewhat Rembrandt lighting, I've got to say. That looks nice. That was unintentional on my part, but I'll take it. Looks very cool. You can see that they've done great printing work with all of the air data ports and things around the nose, as well as the de-icing mister ports up here for the main windscreen. That looks nice, and of course the windscreen itself is rendered quite nicely as well. With the shadow falling as it is right now, you can see the geometry of the nose. It's all very nicely almost chiseled here coming down to the nose tip. That looks very nice to me. And of course you've got the nose landing gear. You've got the landing gear doors underneath here, and you even have some landing light details, so that looks very nice. Of course, the landing gear here, they all roll quite well, and the main gear pivot as well, so the aircraft can pitch up and down on the ground, so that looks good. Plastic wheels and rubber tires, that all looks very nice. Our engines, there is the main exterior fan on the engine here, the right engine, quite obviously, for our perspective, but I love what they have done with the engines on this particular model. You can see those fan blades in there, and they're spaced out so that you can see into the engine a little bit, and you can even see outside the engine through the rear. If I get the light to fall in there just right, you can see that the engine is passed through. You can see if I place my finger behind the aircraft, you can see, look in the upper left section of the engine here from our perspective, you can see my finger sort of goes through those holes. You can see that I'm changing the color inside those holes. So the engine is actually see-through. I thought I saw that on the Lufthansa A380 that we took a look at some weeks ago, but no, this is actually there. So these are see-through, pass-through engines, and obviously that's because these engines have a very high bypass ratio for efficiency. Toward the wingtip here on the starboard wing, you can see that same geometry that we saw on the port wing, just obviously mirrored here, but we have this nice curving shape with a lot of uplift, I must say, going up toward that very nicely and elegantly curved end fence there, which is part of the wing structure itself. It's not just stuck onto the end of the wing there like it is in some other designs. That just looks very elegant, crisp and clean and lovely, absolutely. Move up a little bit more, we can get a sense of the overall disposition of the empennage on the aircraft. We can zoom in a little bit. Take a look at that. Vertical and horizontal stabilizers back in this section. That all looks crisp and clean and prim and proper. Very nice. Just as we have on the leading edges of the main wings, we also have this silver paint on the leading edges of the empennage wings in our horizontal stabilizer, incorporating the elevators on the trailing edge, as well as on our vertical stabilizers of the upper section. Obviously, this would be incorporating the rudder on its trailing edge. That looks absolutely wonderful. Really like all of that. And then moving down a little bit, you can get more of a sense of the proportion here from nose to tail. Looks absolutely glorious. Really, really, really like this model. I was very surprised, not only at its overall size when I took it out of the box, but I really also just enjoy its proportion and its construction. It's mostly die-cast. You've got the fuselage and all of the wing surfaces, main wing surfaces, the empennage, it's all die-cast as well. The only plastic on it are the engines and the landing gear. In terms of the wheels and the tires are rubber, obviously, but lots of die-cast, almost completely die-cast. The model is pretty heavy as well. It's on par, again, weight-wise, with the A380. So even though this is a very different sort of aircraft from something like the A380, I can't help but compare this to the A380, at least in terms of the model, because it's on that level. If you have a Gemini A380, The A350 is very similar in a lot of regards, and I like those models, so I like this one as well. It's put together very nicely. Absolutely have nothing at all bad to say about it. Taking a look at the starboard side of the aircraft now. Zoom in a little bit and take a look at some of the finer details along this side. As we mentioned in a previous cut, here is the cargo door, forward cargo door here on the right side of the aircraft. We also do have another ingress-egress main cabin door there. Obviously, we also have a reiteration of most of the graphics that you had on the port side of the aircraft. There is the Air France KLM group decal right there. SkyTeam logo, that also looks very nice. I like all of that. Obviously, we have a partial registration here on the nose gear door. Cargo door, as we mentioned, more ground servicing ports along the right side of the fuselage, another cabin exit door, Air France titles, and then we have got our cabin windows through the passenger compartments. That looks very nice. Here is our right-hand engine nacelle, looking absolutely crisp and clean. Not only are the graphics done very nicely, but the actual structure itself is very nice. There are no burrs or anything anywhere. It just looks very smooth and crisp and clean, and I absolutely adore it. Wonderful. Nice view of the cross-sectional profile of the wing here. You can see just how delicate that leading edge profile is. I really like that. Very, very nicely done. And of course, we have got ourselves our main gear here. We have got twin trucks here, twin bogies on the main gear, 4 wheels each. That looks very nice. We've got our struts there for the main gear, and of course the wheels, which are wrapped in rubber tires. Looks very good. Wing tip detail here from the side. That all looks very, very nice. I definitely like all of that. Absolutely beautiful. Look at that sharp focus and everything. That looks absolutely glorious. And it comes to a very sharp point right here at the top. Absolutely wonderful. Absolutely adore all of that. Toward the empennage section, the tail section of the cabin. There you go. You can see A350-900 there, right where the light is shining over. A350-900 is what that says. And then there's our full registration on the tail there. Foxtrot Hotel Tango Yankee Alpha. Very, very nice. Rear service door, rear cargo door in this section here. That looks good. And then, of course, we have got ourselves the empennage with our horizontal and vertical stabilizers. That's looking very nice. Come up. You can see the rendering there of the colors, at least, of the French flag. And then in the upper section of the vertical stabilizers, you can see where the light is reflecting most brilliantly now. You have got the stars here in the field of blue. That is also representing the flag of the European Union. So you've got double duty there for the same bit of paintwork. I like all of that immensely as well. The tail cone looks very crisp and clean. I like all of that. No complaints there. And then everything here in terms of the horizontal stabilizers, they're all mounted straight. No crookedness anywhere. Looks really, really nice. No problems, qualms, criticisms, nothing of the sort from me on this one. It looks really nice. And also with the reflectivity that we're seeing from this paint, it just shows how smooth that surface is. I really, really like all of that. You can see how the light is reflecting, how it's sort of scintillating, being scattered a little bit. That's indicative of the surface characteristics of the material that we're looking at, and it's very smooth, as you can see, going through the printing here with the paint, and the graphics looks absolutely wonderful. No problems anywhere on this. You can just see how smooth it is just by eye. Absolutely wonderful. No problems at all. Loving this thing. Now to take a look at the tail section of this aircraft, we'll zoom in here and immediately you can see the points of interest start to come into focus. Right here in the center of the tail there, at the end of the tail cone where it terminates, you can see the exhaust outlet for the auxiliary power unit. All of that looks very nice. Terminates in a reasonably sharp point as well. I like all of that. Trailing edge of our vertical stabilizer there, as well as the horizontal stabilizers. That all looks very nice and crisp and clean. Shut lines for our elevator control surfaces, that looks good. Shut lines for the rudder are also evident, but not quite visible from this angle. Down here we have got 2 service doors for the auxiliary power unit right down in this section. That looks nice. And then if we move down a little bit more, you start to see the disposition of the rear side of the main landing gear. That also looks very nice and crisp and clean, and the aircraft sits absolutely dead straight and level on the ground, sitting on the gear. Looks very nice. Exhaust sides of the engines as well. You can see that they have added a few extra parts in there to enhance the detail. Looks absolutely marvelous. No problems at all. Love it. Absolutely love the thing. No problem. Trailing edges of the wings here. Move up a little bit so the focus stops going haywire. There we go. There it is. Trailing edge of the wing. Looking wonderful. Pan across to the right side of the aircraft. Same deal here. Marvelous. Absolutely marvelous. No problems at all. This, I don't know, you might be able to tell from what I'm saying here, this may be one of my favorite models. It definitely is. And it was a surprise to me. Again, I wasn't entirely sure what to expect. I mean, I like the livery and I like the overall appearance of the aircraft, but this is a very nicely done model. It really, really is. I'm very pleased. And for the sake of symmetry, another look at the starboard side of the aircraft now from dead-on profile view. There's our nose detail once again. All of that looking absolutely wonderful to me. Yes, there it is. Nose gear again with the little strut on the trailing side. That looks nice. And then as we slowly pan across, looks wonderful. Looks absolutely wonderful. No problems here at all. More graphics here reiterating the registration partially blocked by the wingtip. And then Airbus A350-900 looks good. A little service port down here. It's probably a lav service port if I had to guess. Another service door here at the rear, which would also be an entry exit if they wanted. And then of course, as we start to move up, there is the left side of the empennage. Looks good. Looks real good. And again, reiteration of the flag of the European Union, at least the stars from the EU flag there. Looks really nice. This position of the antennas across the top of the fuselage as well. Looks nice. Looks really nice. Once again, I don't have much more to say other than that this is a really good model. Absolutely, it's a really good model, if you couldn't tell that by now. Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Take the camera freehand, take a little bit of a closer look at the overall lay of the land here. There's the nose and cockpit area once again. Slightly closer view of the graphics now. Looks absolutely wonderful, as we've been saying ad nauseum here. Looks good. Looks real good. Detail here on the wings where they join up with the fuselage. Once again, we do not have a cradle arrangement. We've got these wings mounted directly into a wing spar, wing box, wing root area on the fuselage proper. No cradle arrangement underneath. That looks good. No problems with any of that as far as I'm concerned. Looks good. And we've got ourselves the top surface of the wing. You can see more details and shut lines there. That looks good. You can also see the little yellow sections on there, these small yellow sections. That's they're not raised or anything, but that is an area where an escape rope could be looped up and secured in case they needed to evacuate this aircraft over the wings, or if for some reason they needed to get up onto the wing surface from the ground. You could loop an escape rope around there. You could also use that for securing emergency slides, rafts, things like that if this aircraft went down in the water. Basically, I would assume that it would be better off in a water ditching situation. You could tie up the life rafts to that so you can get them loaded up. But nicely done pylons for the engine mounts. And you can also see here on the left engine, you've got that fin on the engine nacelle just for adding a little bit more low pressure to energize the flow as it goes over the wing. And then, there we go, inside that left-hand engine. Looks good. Looks real good. Yes, there it is. Beautiful. Beautiful fan blade detail. Really like that. They hit it out of the park with these engines. They are probably the favorite engines that I've got in any of these aircraft models so far. There's the nose. Looks good. Looks really nice. And I don't know if this is just middle of the night hallucinations starting to set in here, but the nose on this aircraft almost looks friendly. Looks happy, if that makes any sense at all. Anyway, top side of the fuselage here we get some more graphics, and obviously our antennas. It's printing there on the strobe, the location strobe there, and then our first antenna And as we come across midships through the wing root, second antenna, there is our internet antenna, and then our aftmost antenna, and then the empennage here. Nice silver detail as well on the APU exit there, the exhaust outlet. There's our vertical stabilizer. Horizontal stabilizers with the shut lines for the elevator. You could also see the shut lines there for the rudder on the vertical stabilizer. And then you can see, I believe that is the little, would you call them? They're quadrilaterals of some sort, but they are bisected into two triangles. But where you see that printing on the fuselage, where the horizontal stabilizer joins up to it, I believe that is a range of travel in terms of the deflection of the horizontal stabilizer for trim. But I could be wrong on that. I don't know if the entire horizontal stabilizer can pitch up or down for trim. Obviously, the main elevator authority is on the trailing edge flap there that you can see the shut lines for. But that's good. There's your registration again. Foxtrot Hotel Tango Yankee Alpha, looks good. And then Airbus A350-900. I don't know if this is evident on the video, if the resolution will be high enough, but I've taken very high resolution still photos of this model, and the absolute only thing that I can say is wrong with this, even though it's not even noticeable just staring at it right now most likely. You see the 3 in 350? Ever so slightly there was a loss of the print there. So the 3 is not entirely rendered, but it's obviously still readable. And I'll put up here on the side of the screen here one of the high resolution shots that I've taken of this, and you can see what I'm talking about, where that 3 has been sort of marred off as a printing flaw. But that's literally it. It is 0.5 millimeter, maybe less than 0.5 millimeter in terms of its overall size. So can I fault them for it? No. But if I had to find anything wrong with this model, it's that, and only that. So no problems at all from where I'm sitting. It's glorious. Engine nacelle once again, and then fuselage. Yes, you've seen everything there is to see from these handheld shots, I think. Looks really, really cool. No problems at all, no qualms with anything. I love it, absolutely love it. It's definitely one of the centerpieces of the collection now. And one last gratuitous engine inlet side shot for you. I really love those geometries on those blades. They nailed it, absolutely nailed it, and the overall disposition of the engine throughout its structure, it's all visible. It looks great. Absolutely it does. Again, it's probably my favorite feature on the model, but it looks so cool. Really does. I love how the engines are actually see-through. You can see through to the rear of the engine from the front side and vice versa. Looks great. Absolutely it looks great. And then, of course, the nose. Nice. Really, really nice. As I have said, it's a great model. Absolutely it is. Highest possible recommendation. It's glorious. If you don't have one, get one. You want it, believe me. And, oh yeah, I almost forgot. All the mentions that I've been making so far about how much this aircraft reminded me of the A380, well, there is the A380, and obviously the A380 is larger than the A350, but they're more similar size-wise than I thought they would be, and I mean, you can see the general comparison there. The wingspan is very similar, and obviously the fuselage length is very similar as well. It's a very different concept, obviously, these two aircraft. One is a quad-engine double-deck jet, and the other one is a twin-engine, just a single-deck wide-body. But, you know, clearly you can tell that they are cut from the same mold in terms of coming from the same company, both Airbus aircraft, obviously, and they really do remind me of each other. But one of them may well not be with us for much longer in terms of the way that the civil aviation economy is going to go. We don't really know yet, and one's probably going to be with us for many decades in the future. The A350 is most likely going to be one of the aircraft that absolutely dominate the skies for the foreseeable future. As for the A380, the future will be our jury on that. But yeah, just thought I would show you these two in direct comparison next to each other. Yeah, very much like them both.
So there it was. In 1/400 scale, the Airbus A350-900 by Gemini Jets.
As I said multitudinous times throughout this review, it is a fantastic model. It is easily one of my favorites, if not the favorite currently in the collection. It's really well done. The assembly is wonderful. The paint is wonderful. The printing is wonderful. I have absolutely no criticisms whatsoever to levy in its general direction. If you don't have one, you want one. You know you do. Go order one. It's a 2019 release, quite obviously, as the box would belie. Wonderful, wonderful representation of what Gemini jets are capable of nowadays. Really, it's great. It's a weighty thing. It is almost entirely die-cast. Again, the only plastic sections on the model are the engines and the landing gear, and that's really about it. Everything else is done solidly in die-cast. Weighs quite a bit. Dimensions are bigger than I had anticipated, but of course they're well within what you'd expect from a 1/400 scale A350, so really, 10 out of 10. No problems with it whatsoever. Go get one. I'm very glad now that I have one. Until next time, I do thank you all very much for watching. Ferrari Man 601 saying thanks, and of course, we will see you soon.